Hello, this is Charlene. We are going to be simplifying quadratics by square roots. In this particular video, we need to recognize a few things before we actually move forward with this. I want to look at the same problem twice. X squared minus 64. Well, x squared minus 64 just happens to be a difference, and it also is the difference of two perfect squares. Well, when we recognize that there is that pattern, we can actually factor this according to a factoring pattern for difference of squares. We can put our little parentheses here. We can recognize that the square root of an x squared is the x, which goes in the front. And then we can recognize that the square root of 64 is 8, and that goes in the back here and here. And then we just simply put a plus sign and a minus sign. Those are the factors for a difference of squares using the factoring pattern. And at that point, we can do the zero product rule. And once we do the zero product rule, we set both of those factors equal to 0. And we end up that with x is equal to -8 and x is equal to a positive 8. And this is a legitimate way to solve this particular quadratic. But I want to point out something that may be obvious to some and not to others, is that it only has two terms. It has an x squared term, it has a constant term. This is the quadratic format that we are looking at. They do not have just a plain old x term. They only have an x squared term and a constant term. But we're going to look at an alternative way to solve this as well. So we're going to use the simplifying quadratics by square roots. So on this side, we can write x squared minus the 64 is equal to the 0, but we are going to add the 64 to both sides. You actually might call this just using order of operations to solve it. The textbooks call it simplifying it by square roots, but it also is just simply using order of operations to isolate the x and find out what the x is equal to. So these two things cancel out. That leaves me with x squared is equal to a positive 64. Let's see, let's change that over here. That was actually adding 64 to both sides. There we go. So x squared is equal to the 64. And then how do we undo a square? Well, we undo a square with a square root. When we square root both sides, on the answer side, we must put a plus or minus. There will be two possible answers there. The square root and the square cancel each other out, literally, and we end up with just an x, and that is going to be equal to plus or minus the square root of a 64. And of course, we know that 8 times 8 is equal to 64, so the final answer would be plus or minus 8. So this answer is the same as this answer. So we can solve this pattern of a quadratic in two different ways. We can use the factoring pattern over here, or we can do it by solving for the square roots and using order of operations on this side. Hopefully that helps you think about it, helps you know how to go through the process. Also gives you your two options. You have two options with how to solve a quadratic that is of the format an x squared term plus some kind of constant number. Okay, have a good day. Click on the subscribe button, click on the like button, come back real soon.